All right, welcome again to Social Distillation, the submarine still of the internet, where we attempt to drop the beat and pour white lightning straight onto your brain. What are we talking about today, Samo?
Well, today is Wheel of Time. As always, we are overthinking everything. We did the three romance episodes, and we were kind of thinking of where we were going to go from there. But we have a lot of comments, some new people on there on our old episodes. We're going to go all the way back to episode 73. So, like, that's what is that, 2001, 2002,
Yeah.
somewhere around there. And I'm kind of like when we first, it was Crown of Swords. So we were just really getting in the middle of everything. Uh, Oh no, wait, 73 was Great Hunt, I think.
That was way back.
Oh, book four
um,
begins. Book four begins. So we were just starting Shadow Rising
okay.
is, and so we'll go back to that. We have a new commenter in there, and Ideals has been rereading and commenting on the relevant videos to it. So that's actually kind of cool. We can go back and revisit some of those, and then we'll have commentary from there, whatever bridges off of that, and maybe actually brainstorm new topics as we go. So if you're just watching this, we love interactive environment. We're small enough we can comment on everybody's comment. If you have something in the Wheel of Time that has piqued your interest, let us know because we like to overanalyze everything and we hope you enjoy it and get something out of it. And then we'll
Yep.
finish, we'll tease some things for the next social episode because we have some house cleaning from our previous one. So,
Yeah. Well, oh, speaking of house cleaning, or if you have thoughts, but also if you catch us in an oopsie, I was bragging about my political dorkery, our last social episode and our last Wheel of Time episode. Ideals called me out for his comment was something to the effect of greatest compliment to Sanderson is us saying that RJ wrote Androl and Pavera really
okay, we'll
well.
start with that one
And
then.
and I had to go back because I was like, wait a minute. No, that started in Knife of Dreams, didn't it? And sure enough, no, I completely. So all the scenes that I was thinking of that I thought were from Knife of Dreams, uh, yeah, perhaps the biggest compliment Sanderson got from you guys was you discussing how well RJ wrote Androl and Pavera. LOL. Yeah, oops. Um, so I went to the Wheel of Time wiki and they've got a point of view page that shows all the lists all the characters who have a point of view section and then what chapter and book it those points of view sections are in. And I went back and sure enough, Androl's point of view chapters don't start until Towers of Midnight.
Hmm.
He is first introduced in Winter's Heart when we see Logain again, and we see this. Oh, hey, there's these two factions within the Black Tower between Taim and Logain. Um, and then he doesn't get a, but his point of view is not until Towers of Midnight, and Pavara has two point of view sections in Knife of Dreams. Like I remembered she was in Knife of Dreams, but I'd forgotten that no, it's the prologue to set up what she's doing with her group of Reds going to the Black Tower. And then in the epilogue, it's the creepy scene with Time saying, let the Lord of Chaos reign, and everybody
Hmm.
laughing creepily at Pavara and her little delegation. I was and so sure enough, the relationship was all Sanderson, or
Well,
however
okay,
much of
so
that was in the notes or
I
whatever.
was about to say preface how we don't know how much was in notes versus what he wrote. But I will say there is a little bit of I would call this evidence of Sanderson being the main person to flesh that out because the things that were annoying about Matt and Tominese worked with Pavara and Andrel. Because
Hmm,
notice it was very similar. It was that banter, it was that back and forth,
it's a good
kind of
point.
quiche. And it was great for a nice little budding kind of two old people having a young love relationship. It
Hmm.
worked in that situation, but it was kind of similar. It did not work for Matt and Tominese because it was
Yeah,
completely out of character for Tominese and very, very much out of character for Matt.
yeah,
And it was forced and everything. But you do force a lot of stupid humor when you're in that young and in love kind of phase, and it really worked for two older people finding that thing again. Look at old people like when they meet in the nursing home or something. They are kind of silly because they're kind of reliving that moment. Watch the beginning of the movie Up. Look at the way
hmm.
they go back and forth, and it's such a perfect little love story, right? So yeah, it is. I think it's the same style that worked in one situation and didn't work in another. So I think that's kind of circumstantial evidence that Sanderson was the lead on that. But good catch, ideals. We get this ball rolling with a correction. And Sanderson, if that was all you, kudos.
Yeah, it worked. It worked so well that I had forgotten what books they were in. Um, going back again, a little more cleanup. Comment not on the YouTube channel, but a text from my son who is now onto Path of Daggers, and he said something interesting that would have fit in when we were talking about Nynaeve and Lan, and I think this is a good example of one of the many reasons Robert Jordan's writing is so good, so memorable, and I understand the people who don't like his style and why they don't like it, but it certainly works for hundreds of millions in books sold, and the people who do like it and reread it, and one of those reasons is the lack of perfection. And what do I mean by that? Well, here's a specific example. As my son said, wow, Nynaeve has been even more insufferable so far, but now she's apologizing sincerely? Impossible. And I think that is a great illustration of how, in a movie, in a film or a TV show, you have a character who has a change of heart, decides to turn over a new leaf, and then they just go on from there and everything works out. Except real life doesn't work like that. You can decide. I mean, how many people go through something like AA and end up having a relapse? It's
About 70 something percent.
yeah.
Now, one of the good
Gary,
things about AA is you just show up the next day again and you start day one
and
again.
you start
And
again.
nobody says anything. They just say day one.
Gary, the Nerdrotic channel, he has been very open about, yeah, he not only he relapsed so hard he went to prison. Okay, and now he's on his second bout of sobriety, and this one has stuck and been going, for like a decade now. So kudos to him. But the point being, you look at what happens to Nynaeve with when Lan shows up in A Crown of Swords, and you think, oh, happily ever after. She's a wife now. She's changed. She's broken her block. She's grown as a person. And yet, right at the beginning of A Path of Daggers, my son is right. You think back to those scenes as they're getting everyone together to go to the farm, with the bowl of winds, and she is pretty insufferable. Even though it's understandable because she is trying to herd a bunch of cats and get things moving and
Hmm.
be a hard nosed leader, but the point being,
Well,
she doesn't just change overnight.
what you find out, and this I've come across as a business owner and a boss and a leader and a supervisor. I've been a supervisor in almost every job I've ever been in because just you competence, you move up quickly. Is the people you have the hardest time dealing with is the people like you. And if you think of the farm and Nynaeve, they're all like her to a large degree. And she
That's
sees
a good point.
herself in it, but doesn't want to admit that. And she's like, why are these people so hard to deal with? It's like, well, why were you so hard to deal with?
And that's where her sincerely apologizing to people comes from. Is it's she knows she needs to lead. She knows these things need to get done, but now she's also realizing, yeah, but is this the best way to do it?
Hmm.
And I think that's where the apologizing comes in. So she's still she's still the same person. She's just growing. And I,
Hmm.
I think that's what the opening to Path of Daggers shows. And it's really probably not until the next book. It's probably not until Winter's Heart where we really see the new, if you will, Nynaeve,
Hmm.
as that growth kind of reaches its culmination.
Well, and it's funny because the spoiler alert if you're reading the series for the first time, but so go away for 30 seconds if you are. You see by the I think it started to slip with the Sanderson stuff just because he wasn't as good with Nynaeve, but you do see that she and Cadsuane become mirrors at some point.
Mm.
And that's why Cadsuane has so much trouble with Nynaeve. because of just what I talked about. This person is too much like me. You know, it's oh, shoot, it's Bear Lane and Matt, not him. He's too much like me,
Yeah.
right? It doesn't make for the best relationships sometimes because you want to complement each other in relationships, even if it's friendships or work relationships or something. One of the problems in my business originally was we were two people that did the same job. We I didn't partner with a business marketing accounting savvy person. I partnered with another coach, and at some point, you just start to say, "Hey, we do the same thing, but I do it better." And you start saying that to each other, and that causes a lot of conflict. And when you're bringing people up, you would think it would be an advantage if they were a lot like you, but it's not. Because you also know the bad parts of you, and you want to save them from that. But you can't because people are people. You can't save everybody from everything. That's relationship advice too. Guy, dude, you can't save her, okay?
Mm.
You can't save her. She has to save herself, and you can be there for that, but you cannot save her.
Just like, lady, you're not going to change him. I
Mm-hmm.
can change him. No, you can't.
Nope, 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 nope. You may change him for a minute while he's trying to impress you, but eventually he's going to be him.
Hmm.
Okay, so
Yep.
back to the subject at hand. Uh, we have to go way back to episode 73 here for new commenter, TY the screenwriter. Now, ISO, tell us if this is your other name because you had to get another handle for a minute. I can't remember what it was, but if not, TY, if you make it all the way to episode 373 from 73, you'll hear comments on your comments. Now, I don't get the first two, Bubbles of Evil, The Great Hunt, which, made me fear for like a bot account. But then the
Mm.
third one's a little more specific. I want to know Rand's environment, how Rand's environments are affected after his passing. So we're
Mm.
talking a metaphysical question here, right? Because we talked a lot about the metaphysical, and part of that was his tavernness, I guess, would be the improper English adjective to that. Is what about him was causing these things to happen? We knew there was balance. Sometimes it was good, sometimes it was bad, but what was it? I want your thought first
It-
because I'm going to connect it to something, and I don't want
so
to influence your thought.
going through, it's an interesting thought experiment, both for the book, but then the general philosophical question of the weave, the pattern as life, fate, choices, free will, destiny, all these things. And going through the Q&A database that I've been going through when we usually do these, something that jumps out quite a bit that RJ, the term he used and he would hammer on, especially questions about the boys in general or Tavarin in particular, is that Tavarin is a corrective mechanism by the pattern.
Mm-hmm.
That when the pattern feels like the weave is becoming unbalanced, then it creates a Tavarin, you know, locally or broadly, like in the case of Rand, in order to shift things back in the general direction that the pattern is supposed to be flowing. So you would think then that there would be at least some kind of ripple effect after a Tavarin leaves an area, even, especially someone as strong as Rand, that this shift would continue probably at a diminishing, like ripples spreading out and becoming less dramatic,
Mm-hmm.
but still there
Mm-hmm.
is what I would think about that.
My only problem, and I know these were actually out of Jordan's mouth, some of those the thoughts, is if the seals are weakening to the Dark One's prison, you would think if it was a corrective mechanism, it would be not balanced. It would actually err in the side of good because the side of bad is actually taking over in the world, is actually becoming more and more open to the
Hmm.
world. And so you would think it wouldn't be complete balance around him. Now, we do know from his development, again, spoilers if you're reading for the first time, is what he had to learn was balance. And he had to learn that he had to be bad sometimes, he had to be good sometimes to do what's right because he's human. And as he says in his own words, I exist. And I exist means I am doing what is necessary in the moment, which doesn't always look like, sunshine and rainbows. It has to rain before the rainbow comes, right? It has to storm. So, uh, yeah, I don't know. Yeah, the corrective mechanism is the explanation Jordan gave, but I don't see how it would be completely balanced at that point where, people were breaking their necks or they were surviving a fall, that kind of thing. Now, also, I would like to bring in things like the portal stones and stuff because we do know in the metaphysics of the world, there was something similar to a string theory going on where there were multiple possibilities, and you see the hub of that being the world of dreams. And we do see from the end of the series where basically there is a weakening of the barrier between the world of dreams and the real world, and Rand being Tavaren so strongly could be basically a hole. He's basically a hole in the pattern between those two things. And I mean, dreams are what they are. Dreams can happen all kinds of ways, right? So they're just weird.
So in answer to the kind of the first question there, that's an interesting point I hadn't considered is the when Min talks about Rand's strange occurrences. I don't remember who she's talking to because someone is criticizing him for it, like it's his fault that these weird
Mhm.
things happen. And Min's point is it's balance. Yeah, you have these freak occurrences where someone trips over a rug and breaks their neck when they hit the ground. That's not supposed to happen. But then you'll have a child fall from a 3-story balcony and live.
Mhm.
So, but I suspect then that what the answer to that would be is those things are simply side effects of that's not actually the Tavarinness in its true form or purpose, that
Mhm.
is a side effect, that whatever mechanism creates this warping effect of the pattern around the Tavarin, it is uh indiscriminate. So while Rand in particular is doing what he needs to do, then the nature of the Tavarin makes it to where, as an example, one of the ones he points out or is thinking about, I think in Fires of Heaven, is that yeah, you have all this weird stuff, and then, but on the other hand, here you have two clan chiefs who have had a blood feud for generations, and now they've gone and made water oath with each other and settled the blood feud, which is the kind of thing that Rand would need in order to accomplish his goals, in order to um, be the dragon reborn and get where he needs to go, which is a correcting, a rebalancing of the pattern. To your point about the the reason that there's not only a major Tavarin, but he has two lesser Tavarin to help him, is because with the Dark One breaking free, the pattern is skewing that much towards the dark that it has to push even harder back towards the light. And so I think the weirdness is simply an indiscriminate side effect. If that makes it, hopefully that makes sense. We'll see what
Well, so
any
I
listeners think
missed
about
part
that.
of your because I had to
Yeah.
answer the door real quick, but so you're thinking more of like a probabilities thing. So it could be four heads in a row and a tails. So it's not necessarily that it's complete balance. It's just has a 50-50 chance every time.
Um in the so the side effects are 50-50. Um so all of those weirdnesses you might get 1,000 heads in a row, that shouldn't happen. Well, it's highly improbable that it could happen. And then you get 1,000 tails in a row, and well, that shouldn't happen. Well, but it can happen, and now you
Mhm.
have balance.
Mhm.
But I
Yeah,
think
with
those are
enough
just side effects.
occurrences, even anything that has a resetting probability will
Mhm.
end up becoming
and, and
50-50.
and the real corrective mechanism part of it revolves around Rand and Matt and Perrin. And you had just given me this thought you missed, is that the reason there are three Ta'veren is because they're human.
Mhm.
And what the pattern is trying to correct is the frickin' Dark One, who is an existential threat
Mhm.
and a power all its own with the true power. So the pattern needs that much to force balance towards the light.
All right, sorry for the hiccup there. I had to be a good neighbor and give the neighbor kid a ride to her water polo practice, which was on the other side of the freeway, which is a long way away. So, but we were talking about the metaphysical and the ripples and balance and probabilities and all of that. So, realistically, Jordan's words are probably what we have to go by, that there's just balance in the force. Though I will say the only thing I'll add to that is we do see later when Rand has his epiphany, you do see it skew more towards the side of growth and good. So maybe balance wasn't the right thing. Maybe balance was he needed to skew more that other direction to have balance. But episode 172, Ideals, is going back through, skimming the rereading the series, and actually we'll just go into the comment here because he says so. I've been rereading the series here and there, and I find it amazing how good the clues are. I hesitate to use the word clear because that would diminish the quality about Dashiva's identity. At the time I was reading it, at the time I was reading it, I was galloping forward through the text, hardly giving myself time to ruminate and ask questions, which is not a good thing. Whoa, shoot, this is a long comment. The biggest clue, the one that should immediately raise suspicion and make you pay attention to smaller clues that follow, was when Rand wakes up after getting slashed by Fane, sees the Ashaman and the Aes Sedai in another quarrel standoff, and makes a note to himself that Dashiva was holding almost as much as Satan as Rand was capable of holding. At the time, it didn't really make me pause because what is that supposed to be? I was
I
rushing. Yeah, I was rushing and kind of assumed that Rand was groggy and wasn't capable of holding much Satan. This perspective, of course, gets immediately disproven because Rand has a showdown with Samael shortly after. A nice play on the ambiguity of the word capable. It's also worth noting that the only times Rand remarks on someone holding almost as much Satan as he's capable of were once in Lord of Chaos when he was sizing up Tyene, and then in Knife of Dreams when Logain was channeling next to him in the Manor battle. It should immediately be clear to the attentive reader that the Shiva guy is a little too special. Suddenly, his hesitation to pay respect to Rand by standing up when he walks in, etc., seems more than just his aloofness. His advices to Flynn to explore his healing talent, his offhand remarks, and then you think back to Taim, who couldn't not notice a dude who could hold so much Satan. I also like to entertain the idea that Taim in Lord of Chaos was still on the fence about switching to the Shadow because there's a moment when he witnesses signs of Rand's madness and gets genuinely shocked. Also shows compassion for him. I think by this time in Crown of Swords, Taim must have made his choice. I wonder what made him choose the Shadow after Dumais Well's triumph. I want to start with the end of that because didn't we get Demandred perspective saying he was grooming Taim from even before he was captured by the Aes Sedai the first time and then escaped?
I was just looking that up to try and figure that out. I know, so we know from both um in the books and statements by both Sanderson and RJ that Demandred is the one who brought time in. It brought time to the dark, and I'm trying to think if we get ever got a timeline for that. Um, because if he was already a dark friend, then I think we can interpret his his shock and his concern, not as compassion, but similar to um shoot, who's the Aes Sedai that swears fealty to him, who's a dark friend, and she rationalizes it in her mind of
Oh yeah,
I
else
have to help
else.
him live. Elza,
Yeah,
I think it was.
yeah,
I have to make sure he lives so that the Dark One can kill him.
yeah. Well, also there was the ones that knew they were supposed to try to keep Rand alive, the Forsaken themselves,
Mm,
that were concerned with his ever progression into madness. But in the cheat book, Demandred saved Taim from the Aes Sedai and gave him his choice then.
okay.
So it was well before that event in Lord of Chaos. Uh, Now, as far as Dashiva, yeah, I knew Dashiva was I don't know I felt like I always knew Dashiva was Asengar, was Agenor.
I I'm trying to remember what I thought at the time. I think I might have as well, but I think that was because I was looking for him.
Hmm.
Um, I I don't know when I knew that Orangar and Asengar were Bilal and what's his bucket? Who was the other one?
Not Bilal.
Oh,
Uh,
Bilal was the guy that
Bethamel.
he Bethamol. Bilal was the one in the stone
Hmm.
that gets pretty unceremoniously nuked by
Yeah,
Moiraine. Um, Bethamol and other guy,
Agenor.
Agenor.
Yeah,
Um,
and we figured out Bethamel becomes Erengar because it's the irony of him being the womanizer
yeah,
becoming the female.
but this is, we're overthinking Wheel of Time. Well, this is why, because stuff like this happens so frequently where you have to wonder, is is that a purposeful um red herring ambiguity on Jordan's part of capable, because that is an easy way to read that, to deflect and mislead about Deshiva, is you can easily interpret that as capable in the moment. And he's just waking up from like a 2 week long coma or whatever it was, after getting slashed by the dagger. However long, I mean, he was out of it for a while. I don't remember exactly how long. And so, yeah, you could easily interpret that as Ideals did originally, is capable right now.
Hmm.
Um, but then you think back, well, wait a minute, no, because he's only used this language a couple of times. Um, and 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 also things come to a head very quickly, so you don't get a chance to ruminate on it too much, because that moment happens at end of Crown of Swords, right before uh, they attack Samael in Ilion. And then by the end of Path of Daggers, Dashiva is some kind of traitor, whether he's a dark friend or not, with that group that attacks Rand. And so Jordan kind of keeps the action moving, so that, oh, you think you've got it figured out, but now you're focused on this. Who were these people? Why did they do it? And are they all dark friends, or are they just traitors? Um, and so there's another way that you could be misled and forget to think about, wait a minute, Dashiva could channel a lot, and he seems smarter than he should be.
Hmm.
Is that really just the absent-minded professor persona, or is he a Forsaken in disguise?
Well, but what and I'm looking through the cheat book now, but what we do know about Agenor was he was kind of the absent-minded professor. He he was he invented the troll, created the Trollocs, created the Murdral, created the Golem. I mean, how with it do you have to not be to accidentally create a Golem? Okay,
Yeah.
because I mean he was freaked out by his own invention there. I mean that was the freaking Oppenheimer moment of
Mm.
the Age of Legends was the creation of the Golem, because the Forsaken were like these things could kill us. And
Yeah. Yeah, not cool.
yeah, not cool at all. So he was that way anyways. Uh,
It That's a good point. It makes me wonder how much of Dashiva's personality was that's just the way he was, and how much of it was him purposefully playing that up in order to seem unassuming.
mhm,
Because you don't get to the point of the Forsaken, of one of the top 13 in the Dark One's employ, by being a dummy. You're not flawless for sure. That's how they so many of them meet their end.
mhm.
But I mean, you gotta
Yeah,
be
but I never thought of
clever.
him as a dummy. It more was like a daydreamer, like someone who's
Yeah,
is super highly intelligent that's just always thinking about things.
yeah. So you can be an absent-minded professor, but you better not be too out of it, because you got to pay attention to the world around you, or someone will literally stab you in the back in the circles that he's in.
Yeah, but also he's out of his element out there
That's true.
as a with the Black Tower and stuff. He should have been in a he should have been with Herod Fell or something, in a library.
Yeah, that's a good point too. He does seem genuinely uncomfortable. I think there's a comment because they all carry swords, and Rand insists they be trained in it. I believe there's a kind of side comment that someone thinks somewhere, maybe Rand, that Dashiva looks especially uncomfortable with it, not
Hmm.
just trying to use it, but even just wearing it, and he looks awkward. Because you get the impression that's not what he did during the War of Power.
Hmm.
He
I
he
mean,
but he
he was spending all his time making everybody else more powerful through
mhm.
forged blades and creatures and everything. He was a
Yeah,
noted biologist. Plus plus two. So he was pretty powerful in the power. Not as strong as uh Robin, but he was close. So yeah, it doesn't have a whole lot on him other than he was a noted biologist in the Age of Legends and he created the Shadow Spawn. Other than that, it just talks about when you meet him in the Eye of the World, and then that ultimately he was brought back as Osingar. So
which
yeah, we're
makes
just
sense how
speculating a
he
lot.
could
Yeah.
how he could guide Finn into becoming a good healer, because even if he doesn't have the ability, he is the kind of person who would know the
Oh no,
theory.
no, when under the Osingar or under the Dashiva heading, because you have to go three different places. That's why I was
Mm,
flipping around so much. You have to go Dashiva, Osingar, and Aganor to get the different connections there.
oh,
He
interesting.
actually was apparently good at healing, and he was
Okay.
encouraging, he was guiding Flynn along so he didn't stick out. He was
Ah,
basically having Flynn do his dirty work for him, so he didn't stick out personally.
clever, clever.
And it even says in the ancient ways of healing, which means it was an Age of Legends thing. So, but yeah, that's interesting insights. I felt like I always thought it was Osingar from the beginning, but there was a time when there was a lot of debate of whether he was actually Demandred playing the
Hmm.
fool.
Yeah,
And
I'd forgotten that was one of the competing theories with Tamandred,
mhm.
was uh Dashiva could be a possibility. I don't think it ever had a big following, but it was something um people seriously considered.
Now, and remember though, this also uh one of the things about Dashiva is he was not just fooling Rand, because remember, none of the Forsaken other than Demandred knew about Taim until the very end.
Mm,
Because everybody was so upset when Demandred brought him forward and made him part of the
that's right.
crew.
That's right.
Yeah. Okay, so now we're going to episode. Oh no, we did 73.
We did this one.
Okay, so this is actually not a Wheel of Time episode. This is when we talk Superman. It says when Heath discussed the difference between Clark Kent and Lucifer, it's It struck me that Boomer Man was the ultimate fantasy of corresponding generations. Just a dude from a flyover country, grew up in the farm, arrives to big city, and slays local nerd with his naturally endowed powers. Also not bald. Millennials, also not bald. Millennials, I don't know what that acronym is.
I assume he's referring to George R. R. Martin.
Oh, being the icon, I think, is the revenge of the spiteful, dysgenic nerds. Can't help but hate both. But I'd rather be Super Stallion, of course.
Um,
You might be able to make sense of that more than me. Yeah.
so that's an interesting take because so since we started talking diving into some politics, I've been avoiding my political podcast for a couple weeks just because I haven't had the desire and I needed a break, and I started listening back to some stuff, this week's stuff, not everything I missed. And Steve Dace made an interesting point about Superman in general, but this Superman movie in particular is one of the things that um and you see this in real time arguments as well, which is one of the infuriating things about the deconstructing postmodernist attacks on Jordan and the Wheel of Time in the last decade or so is you could, I mean, you've made this point, is you had a trans character, you had a trans allegory right there waiting for you, but you can't see the forest for the trees because you're so myopic in your vision. A good philosophical character or story is something that any side can grab hold of as a an example or a metaphor or support for their side, whatever their and side happens to be. And Superman in general and this movie in particular are like that in that you know, um, you see the left grabbing hold of it's an immigrant story. Well, and the right is annoyingly reflexively fighting against that. Well, no, it literally was. That it was created by two natural born American citizens, but their parents were immigrants.
Mhm.
And they were Jewish immigrants, so not only immigrants but an ethnic group that were outsiders, and they said themselves of this is a purposeful exploration of they wanted to be Americans. The Superman creators, I'm brain farting on the names of the Joel Schuster and I forget the other guy's name. Um, they desperately wanted to be part of America. They wanted to be thought of as Americans. Um, and yeah, in hindsight, they shouldn't have had to go through everything they did in the same way that, the 442nd Regimental Combat Team of Japanese Americans, most of whom came out of internment camps to prove that no, we're every bit as American as everyone else. Anyway, point being, yeah, it is an immigrant story. And so you see people grabbing onto that for their side, but then over on the more right, you see people grabbing on to other elements, specifically the truth, justice, and the American way ideal. The fact that he is the way he is because he was raised in flyover country, Smallville, Kansas, right? That this is why he has the core and the code of morality that he does. And and so I think ideals, to your point, you're kind of taking you're taking the character too far. You can do that. It can be used to illustrate that, but I don't think that's what it is or what it does. Now, has it been used for that? Sure. But at its core, I don't think that's what Superman is doing. I think it is more in line with, which is why I said it. It is it is the thought experiment of what would you do with ultimate power. Um, that there is also a because this was created by Jews, there is definitely a Mosaic element to this. A very obvious Moses allegory of, his mother puts him in a basket and puts him in the river to protect him from you know, the end of the world as far as they're concerned, as the Egyptians are going around killing um, Jewish children. And here you have his parents put him in a basket, a spaceship, and send him off because the world is ending, and he is taken in by outsiders. So there's an obvious Moses element there, who had the power of God, through him to do the plagues and the miracles and everything, and uh, and so what do you do with that? Well, Moses led the people through, you know, both pronouncement and example. Superman leads by example. He protects, he helps.
Mm-hmm.
And then his arch enemy is someone who is feasible, just a hyper intelligent, very driven individual who decides to use those talents for personal gain at the expense of others.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't think it's about him being a nerd, as you say. I think it's about him corrupting the natural gifts he has,
Mm-hmm.
in contrast to Superman, who, if anything, you could make the case that this is a rural versus urban uh, story
Mm-hmm.
of Superman is the way he is because he is a rural small town boy. Lex Luthor is the way he is because he grew up in the under the corrupting influence of an urban area of Metropolis. Um, and
Well,
but
there's a
on the
little.
other hand, it is a broad enough tale full of well established tropes and commentary on human nature that you can use it to illustrate all of these other ideas.
Well, and there's also a little bit of Nietzsche and Dostoevsky in there, where you're looking at the human urge to destroy the perfect, to make something, to find the weakness in what is ultimately the good, and bring ourselves down realistically. And I think Lex Luthor represents that to some degree, because Superman represents what is
That's a
the
good point.
ideal.
I mean, literally, Superman. That term
Ubermensch, yeah, yeah.
comes from Nietzsche.
Hmm.
So there is a very obvious connection there to that philosophical idea.
And there's, I mean, it's no accident that he is alien, because then the human element is to bring it down, to destroy it.
That's an interesting point too. Yeah, that that this superness comes from above, comes from outside, and then our corrupted fallen nature makes us want to destroy what is the ideal.
All right, well, that's all the comments.
All right. Well, uh hopefully we said something interesting to spark some thought in you. That's what we're always trying to do here. And why we appreciate, comments like that, because you get the old gray matter working,
Hmm.
and we enjoy that. Next time, we'll on social political stuff, we will probably be following up what we talked about last time, which is the revelations from DNI Gabbard about the Russia collusion Trump 2016 election, just pure fabrication, and see if there's any movement there. Um, I had forgotten, I was bragging about being a political dork, and then I completely whiffed on something because when I brought up the point from Jason Buttrill about all of the compromat that Russia had on Hillary and then never released. So again, that torpedoes the whole idea that Trump was colluding with Russia is, well, then why didn't they release this stuff? And you brought up, well, yeah, but how reliable is that information? Well, remember the DNC email hack? Someone hacked the DNC, the Democrat National Committee's email servers, and got this whole treasure trove of information. Turned out it was Russians, and they had it, and that's where that information came from. So whether all of those points about Hillary were true or not, it was true that that's what other Democrats thought about her. And so that would have been really damning to release, that her own party is really concerned about her health and her mental state,
Mm.
as well as, the level of corruption as seen by things like, hey, you religious organizations, endorse me, help me, and I'll make sure that the State Department, which, hey, here we get, this is what all the Doge stuff with USAID was all about, is because it's bribery and it's legalized bribery and money laundering.
Mm-hmm.
And so that came from the DNC hacks. Uh, so it would have been pretty damning if all of that was released to say, hey, these are what her own people are saying about her, and you want to vote for her. It will be interesting to see if anything comes of this, though. And I sent you a link of Gabbard at a press conference, and someone asked about these criminal referrals that had been sent over to the Department of Justice, and someone asked point blank, does this include former President Barack Obama? And she just says, yep, and basically leaves it at that. So we'll see if anything comes of this. Now, that being said, who knows what if anything will be new next week, because criminal investigations take some time.
Mm-hmm.
So there might be some leaks, there might be some more documentation, who knows, but we'll talk about that. The other thing I wanted to talk about is I've been wanting to talk about this New York City mayoral candidate, Mamdani,
Mm-hmm.
and what he represents. And we've talked a lot about high trust versus low trust societies, and I think this is where Ideals, you can comment because you live in one. That one of the things that what he represents is the ideology of the third world.
Mm-hmm.
And it's supposed to be racist to say that, but yeah, that ideology exists in places where people have skin tones like mine too.
Mm-hmm.
And it's disastrous, and it is a horrible place to live under. And that's being imported, has been being imported, and now you see the fruits of that.
Well, that'll be interesting. So we'll pick up there next time, and leave comments of what you want to hear Wheel of Time wise. If you want us to dive into more characters, who's interesting to you, if you want us to dive into parts of the story that stuck out to you, or just we always love talking the metaphysical. So, all right. Anything else to add before we sign out?
No, we'll see y'all next time.
All right, later.